All right, guys, this is lesson 21. This is our last packet math lesson. Woohoo, you can do it. This is actually a review of what you did last week with looking at equivalent fractions with tens and hundreds. So this should be pretty easy. All right, so they did an example for us. It shows 6/10 is the same amount of shading as 60 hundredths. It's just cut up differently. All right, so let's look at this one. How many are shaded? 4. How many total? 10. This is 4/10. All right, now if I look at this, it's the same amount of shading. It's just that these ones are cut up smaller. So how many are shaded? 10, 20, 30, 40. And how many total? 100. Use multiplication to find the equivalent fractions. So 4/10 is equal to 40 100ths, because how do I get from 10 to 100? Multiply by 10. Whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. Okay. All right, let's go on to the next page. All right, we're going to fill in the numbers with fractions to make true sentences. All right, so I need a number that's going to give me something and 15 hundredths equals 55 hundredths. Well, we know that our denominator is going to be hundredths right off the bat because we know we never touch the denominator. What number do I need to put with 15 to get to 55? Well, when we're trying to find a missing addend, you can subtract. So 55 minus 15 is going to give me 40. 40 100ths plus 15 100ths is going to give me 55 hundredths or 100ths. That is the same as saying, so 40 hundredths, they want us to now put it in tenths. 40 hundredths is the same as 4 tenths. So you can even take off the zeros. 40 hundredths, 4 tenths. And 15 hundredths gives us 55 hundredths. So they're just kind of putting it in unit form. All right, so let's take a look here. Now, guys, remember, I don't like this because they want us to do this as tenths, but let's make them all the same. Put a 0 on the bottom and a 0 on the top. Multiply by 10. Okay, now we've got the same denominator. Makes it much easier. How many hundredths do I need to get from 40 to 55? 15. So, 15 hundredths, and it is 4 tenths. Makes it easier to do common denominators. But we can go back and forth because we know how to do this. All right, we're going to make this hundredths. How many hundredths do we need to get from 5 to 55? We need 50. We know that 50 hundredths is the same as, get rid of those zeros, 5 tenths and 5 hundredths. All right, let's do this one, hundredths. How do I get from 25 to 55? I need to add 30. They want it in tenths. 3 tenths plus 25 hundredths gives me 55 hundredths. All right, of the 100 students in 4th grade, 70 students are girls. Write a fraction in tenths and a fraction in hundredths to tell what fraction of the 4th grade students are girls. All right, so girls over total. So how many girls are there? How many total students? There it is in hundredths. If I want to do it in tenths, how do I get from 100 to 10? I can divide by 10. I like to go backwards, though. It's easier for my brain to work with multiplication. How do I get from 10 to 100? Multiply by 7. What do I need to multiply by 7 to get to 70? Or, I'm sorry, by 10. By 10. Multiply by 10. What do I need to multiply by 10 to get to 70? Or just divide. Either way you want to go. Okay. We also can just do the trick. If the zeros are lined up, you can cross them out. if there's zeros at the end. Okay? 70 hundredths is the same as 7 tenths. Then it says write a fraction of tenths and a fraction in hundredths to tell what fraction of the 4th grade students are boys. Well, if 70 are girls and there's 100 total, then 30 must be boys. 30 out of 100, which is the same as 3 tenths. All right, name the same amount. So we've got, let's see what they've got us doing up here. How do you write decimals equivalent to 7 tenths and 7 hundredths? Well, let's start out with our chart. Let's see if you remember from last week. Put in your decimal point. This is tenths, hundredths. This is ones, tens, hundreds. Okay, so there's our place value chart. Remember that this is the tenths place, so we can put our decimal in there. I know it's over here, but it helps. The more you write it, the better it sticks in your brain. Here's your tenths place. Here's your hundredths place. Okay, so this decimal shows both of these models. Let me show you how. So this model shows 7 tenths. 7 tenths, there it is. This model shows 70 hundredths. Have we not said the whole time 7 tenths is the same as 70 hundredths? Absolutely we have. Look at that shading. Nobody shaded any more, nobody shaded any less. We just cut it up differently. So when we're looking at decimals, 7 tenths is the same as 70 hundredths. All right, let's try it. What decimal is equivalent to 3 tenths? Well, put a 3 in the tenths place. Bam. Done. What decimal is equivalent to 55 100ths? Remember I told you the last digit needs to be in the hundredths place. 55 hundredths. Write a decimal equivalent to 75 hundredths. Well, we're going to put our decimal. There's a 7 in the tenths, a 5 in the hundredths, which makes 75 hundredths. All right. What decimal is equivalent to 80 hundredths? Shade the model below and then show the fraction and the decimal. All right, so there's 100 pieces here. We need to shade 80. I am not going to count each one, but I do know that there's 10 here. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. All right, so there's my 80 shaded. Now write the decimal. So if I were to set up my chart, tenths, TTHS, hundredths. I know it's not spelled right. I tried to abbreviate. All right, so I'm going to put in my 80. Make sure my last number is in the hundredths place. 80 hundredths. There's my number. All right, look at problem 4. Shade the model to show an equivalent fraction in tenths and decimals. So we're still sticking with 8 tenths. I just gave you the answer. But actually I didn't, because you already knew that 80 hundredths is the same as 8 tenths. So we're good. All right, and how do I write that as a decimal? This is exactly what I'm doing. 8 tenths is the same as 80 hundredths. Look at the shading. Nothing has changed. It's just the piece size. 8 tenths is the same as 80 hundredths. 80 hundredths is the same as 8 tenths. Same thing. All right, use what you know about equivalent fractions to explain why 8 tenths and 80 hundredths are equivalent. I want you to do that one on your own. So pause the video here. Do it on your own. All right, find the sum of 80 hundredths and 20 hundredths. Then use what you know about equivalent fractions to explain why 8/10 and 2/10 equal 1 whole. All right, so if we do 80 hundredths and 20 hundredths, 80, so remember you add the pieces, not the size, 100, 100ths. Well, you know that any number over the same number is going to be 1 whole, right? So if I have 80 pieces and 20 pieces, then I put them all together, I'm going to have 100 pieces out of 100 total. That's the whole thing, 1 whole. Same thing I'm doing right here. 8/10 and 2/10. If I shade 8/10 and then I shade 2/10, I'm going to shade that whole thing. So it gives me 1 whole. I want you to explain why in your own words. Pause the video here and write in your own words, why are these equal? Why is it the same? All right. Lesson 21 is a bit of a long one. Here we go. They've got an example for us. 9 hundredths, we're good to go. Okay. Alana had, oh, hi Alana. Alana has an assortment of books in her bookcase. 9 hundredths of her books are comic books. What fraction of the books are comic books? So here's your decimal. In words, 9 hundredths, that's actually unit form. We've talked a lot about unit form, the number with its unit. The fraction, 9 over 100. 9 out of the 100 books are comic books. So now it says we're going to shade the model below to show 34 hundredths. So that means we need to shade 34 out of 100 total. So there's 100 total already there. They made it easy for us. So here's 10, 20, 30, 4. 34 hundredths, or 34 out of 100. If I were to write it as a fraction, 34 hundredths, same thing. One's a fraction, one's a decimal. All right, we're going to show 34 hundredths in the place value chart. I get ahead of myself. Some of these questions go with, I just did the answer. All right, so 34 hundredths. Now we're going to write this in words. 34 hundredths. Now, if you tell me hundreds and you put an S on the end of that, you've just made the number 3,400. No, we want hundredths. Big, big difference. Make sure that th is at the end. Write the fraction. Well, we know it's 34 out of 100. 34 hundredths. All right. Tell whether each statement is true or false. All right, so let's look at this first one. 3 hundredths. Is the 3 in the hundredths place here? No, the 3 is in the tenths place. So let's put up here, I'm going to put my chart up here for reference. Ones, tens, hundreds. Okay. So 0.3 or 3/10 is not the same as 3 hundredths. False. 3 hundredths equals 3 hundredths. True. 3/10 equals 30 hundredths. Oh, think about that. 3/10, make it a fraction if it's easier to picture, equals 30 hundredths. Is that the same? Oh, you betcha, and they tried to get us. Not going to happen. 3/10 equals 3/10. Well, yeah, that's true. All right, write 2 equivalent fractions to 3/10. Well, we know that this is 3/10. And we also know that that is equal to, look at that, I did it over here. 31 hundredths. It's just cut differently. 3/10 is when it's cut up into hundredth size pieces. There's 30 of them. All right, which of the following names the same number as this and circle the letter for all that apply? All right, so let's figure out what it is first. So there's our chart up here if we need it. It goes over 2 spaces, so it's hundredths. 62 hundredths. Now let's read this. 62 hundredths. Yeah, that works. I like it. 6/10 and 2 hundredths. Well, 6/10 and 2 hundredths. It really does work. There's a 6 in the tenths place and there's a 2 in the hundredths place, so that could work. 62 tenths. Remember that the last digit, if you're looking at it like this 2 would need to be in the tenths place, is it? No, doesn't work. 62 hundredths, 62 hundredths. Okay? All right, the number line below shows 1 whole divided into tenths. So here's starts at 0, goes up to 1, divided into tenths. Write numbers in the boxes to label the missing fractions. Explain how you know the numbers to write. Oh, so easy, guys. How do you say this? 2/10. How do you say this? 4/10. How do you say that? 5/10. Well, got a little tricky there. 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, 6/10, 7/10, 8/10. And then just explain how you did it. Just a sentence is fine. Don't go crazy. All right, our last part of lesson 21. What is this number written as a fraction? Circle all the letters that apply. All right, so how do we say this? 5/10. The 5 is in the tenths place. This says 5 hundredths. Can that be right? No. 5 is not in the hundredths place. 5/10. Well, yeah, that's what it is. 50 hundredths. Would that work? Is 5/10 the same as 50 hundredths? Oh, you betcha. And how about 50/10? No. Guys, 50/10, hopefully you can see this. 50/10 is the same as 5 whole. This is like saying 50 divided by 10. Because the top number is bigger than the bottom. It's an improper fraction. All right, here we go. Rita correctly answered 9 questions out of 10 on a test. What fraction of the test questions did Rita answer incorrectly? Woo, on that wording. Look at that. Rita correctly answered 9. So she incorrectly answered 1. You with me on that? So automatically I can get rid of 2 answers. Because they're not asking me how many she got right. They want to know how many she got wrong. So if she got 1 wrong out of 10 total, there's only 1 answer. It says Patrick chose A as the correct answer. Yeah, how did he get 9/10? He got 9/10 because he told us how many she got right, not how many she got wrong. And you can write that in. Last page, we're on the home front. We're almost there. All right, here we go. Austin bought an eraser for 65 cents and a pencil for 20 cents. What fraction of a dollar did he spend? Write the fraction as a decimal. All right, so 65 cents. How many total cents do you need to make a dollar? You need 100, right? So 65 out of 100 cents and 20 out of 100 cents gives me 85 out of 100 cents. Add the pieces, not the size. So what fraction of a dollar did he spend? He spent 85 hundredths. Now we're going to write that as a decimal. If I make my chart, tenths, hundredths, and put it in. Oh, look at that. As a decimal, that looks familiar. That's how we write money. So we spent 85 cents. All right, we're going to tell if these are equivalent. So let's read this. 15 hundredths. Let's look at the first one. 15 hundredths. Is it the same? Yes. 1 5/10. No, because 15 hundredths is less than 1. This has 1 whole and some extra. So this is not even close. 15 tenths. Well, if you have 15 tenths, you can't have 15 hundredths. That's the same number of pieces. Different size. And the last one, 15 hundredths. The 5 is in the hundredths. Does that work? It sure does. All right, and our last problem, number 5. Mackenzie has $1, 2 dimes, and 3 pennies. George has only dimes and pennies, but has the same amount of money as Mackenzie. How many dimes and pennies could George have? Could means there is more than one answer for this. Do not panic if you do not get the same answer as I do. If you are doing these problems and you are pausing and doing them yourself and then seeing if they're correct and you don't get the same answer I do, it's okay. There's a couple possibilities here. All right, so Mackenzie, she's got $1. So I'm going to write this as money. 2 dimes, which is 20 cents, and 3 pennies, which is 3 cents. So she has $1.23. It says that George has only dimes and pennies. Well, how am I going to get dimes? I need 10 dimes to make $1. So that's $1. Then I need 2 dimes to get to 20. So there's 12 dimes and 3 pennies. So how many dimes and pennies could George have? He could have 12 dimes and 3 pennies. I don't know. There's an endless amount of possibilities here. Well, because you can do pennies for any of them. So there's different possibilities. But here is one. Congratulations on finishing your packet, and I can't wait to see it. Hope to see you soon, guys.